My name is Eloise Maynard, and I'm 82 years old. I stood under the cold rain outside Baltimore Washington Airport, my luggage at my feet, my hands trembling, not from the chill, but from the ache that had settled deep in my chest. The ache of disbelief. Betrayal. My daughter, Raylan, and her husband, Clayton, had just dropped me off like I was some worn-out passenger they were done waiting on. No hugs. No goodbyes. Just the sound of Clayton's Range Rover pulling away, taillights disappearing through the misty drizzle. My coat was thin. My dress damp. My purse empty. They'd taken my wallet under the excuse of booking my flight online, then told me casually, "We'll text you the gate number." But the text never came. Instead, Raylan had leaned in through the car window just moments before they sped off. Her voice still echoed in my ears, bitter and cold. "You're too old for luxury, Mom. This trip isn't for you. Go home." But I didn't have a home anymore. I had sold my house 2 years ago to move into their fancy condo at their request, to help us with the kids, they had said. "You won't need your old place," they had smiled. "We'll take care of you." Now I was standing here, wet, hungry, and homeless, abandoned at an airport by the very people I raised. A woman pushing a stroller passed by, glancing at me, then quickly looking away. People saw me. They just didn't see me. I had built my whole life around Raylan. Worked double shifts as a nurse, packed school lunches with love, gave up vacations to send her to college. And now she left me here like a burden she couldn't carry anymore. I shuffled toward the terminal, dragging my old suitcase, not even knowing why. I had nowhere to go. No money. No idea what to do next. My legs ached. My back screamed. My pride crumbled. At the sliding glass doors, I paused. The warmth inside beckoned. I looked back once, hoping, just hoping, that maybe it was a prank, a misunderstanding, maybe they'd come back. But the rain answered for them. Still, I wasn't going to cry. Not again. As I walked through the doors into the terminal, I whispered to myself, if this is how they leave me, then I will make sure they never forget it. And that was the moment, right there, standing in soggy shoes on cold tile floors, that something inside me shifted. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to rise. But how does a broke, abandoned grandmother buy an airport? Well, that part of the story is just beginning. 2 nights after Raylan and Clayton dumped me at the airport, I found myself sitting on a metal bench in the terminal's public waiting area. I hadn't slept. Not really. Just dozed off a few times with my purse clutched to my chest, empty as it was. My clothes still smelled like the rain, and my body ached from stiffness, but I didn't move. I couldn't. Each hour that passed, I kept hoping they'd come back. That maybe Raylan would run in, crying, and say it was all a mistake. But the truth sat heavy in my stomach. I wasn't wanted. Not as a mother. Not as a grandmother. I had become too old for luxury, too inconvenient for family. It was around 3 a.m. when a janitor named Melinda found me. She had gray-streaked braids and eyes that carried their own pain. She looked at me and didn't look away. "You okay, ma'am?" I nodded. I lied. She sat beside me, without asking. "You've been here 3 days. You hiding from someone?" I laughed dryly. No, I was discarded. Melinda blinked, and her hand gently touched my shoulder. "Come on. Let's get you something warm to drink." She bought me a tea with her own money and led me to the employee lounge. That night, she gave me something far more precious than tea. She gave me a little dignity. Over the next week, I quietly became part of the airport's forgotten corners. The staff knew I wasn't a traveler, but no one turned me away. I folded blankets at the lost and found. I returned carts to the docking station. I greeted the elderly, who looked confused at the gates. I smiled, even when my heart was sore. It was there, in that in-between world, I met Grant Delaney. He was an older gentleman in a crisp brown coat, about my age, with the smooth walk of someone used to owning boardrooms. I first noticed him watching me from a cafe corner. Watching, not in a creepy way, but with curiosity. Like he saw something familiar in me. "You're not TSA," he said one afternoon. "And you're not a traveler. Who are you?" I didn't answer. I just shrugged. He smiled. I'm Grant. I used to own part of this airport years ago. Sold my shares when I retired. Now I just come back to watch people. Beats watching TV. That sparked something in me. I hadn't had a real conversation in days. I told him my name. Just Eloise. Not my story. Not yet. But he came back every day after that. We shared sandwiches from the vending machine, and slowly I told him the truth. About Raylan. The house I gave up. The betrayal. He listened. Not with pity, but with respect. You're not broken, he said. You're just buried. I didn't understand. Buried. He nodded. Some people try to bury what they think is old and useless. But they forget, we're not trash. We're seeds. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. Grant returned the next morning with something different in his hands. A file folder. This is the original blueprint of this airport, he said. My late wife was an architect. She designed this whole terminal back in the 70s, before they pushed her out and erased her name. I stared at the drawings, amazed. The curves of the building, the skylights, the underground wiring, all hand-drawn. Grant continued. They tried to bury her work. But now, I want her legacy back. I want to buy back the majority shares of this airport and name the terminal after her. But I can't do it alone. I frowned. What does that have to do with me? He looked me dead in the eyes. Because I need someone who knows how to fight without fists. Someone who understands what it means to be erased, and who refuses to stay invisible. It didn't make sense. I was just a grandma with no money, no home, no power. But Grant smiled. You've got more than you think, Eloise. All you need now is a plan. And that was the first time since Raylan threw me away that I felt something stirring inside me again. A reason to rise. But I had no idea that Raylan and Clayton were about to show up at the airport again, for something far worse than betrayal. Something that would light the match to everything. It happened 3 weeks after I met Grant. By then, I wasn't just surviving. I had started moving. Quietly, cautiously, but forward. I'd taken a job cleaning the private lounges part-time. Melinda helped me get in. The airport manager, who thought I was some harmless old widow, approved it without fuss. I kept my head down, worked night shifts, and used every break to learn. Grant brought me paperwork every other day. He showed me who held current airport shares, who could be bought out, and which investors were about to jump ship. Most of it went over my head at first, but I took notes like a student. I stayed up nights reading shareholder rights and corporate takeovers on a borrowed tablet. You were a nurse for 40 years, Grant would say. You know how to adapt. Business is just diagnosis and treatment. That's all. Still, part of me felt unsure. Who was I, Eloise Maynard, once just a single mother, now nearly penniless, to even dream of owning something so big? Then Raylan showed up. I was mopping near gate 26 when I heard her laugh. That high, sharp tone I used to adore when she was a little girl. I turned slowly, careful not to drop the mop. She was standing in line with Clayton, dressed head to toe in designer gear, dragging matching Louis Vuitton suitcases behind them. They didn't notice me, but I noticed everything. They were headed for the private charter wing. First-class vacation, most likely. My stomach twisted. I followed at a distance, ducking behind columns and kiosks like a spy in a bad TV show. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe closure. Maybe proof that I wasn't imagining the cruelty. And that's when I heard Clayton say it. She better not call us again, he muttered. I told you, Raylan. She's done. Dead weight. Raylan sighed dramatically. I blocked her already. She's not coming back to the condo. We needed that space, Clay. You were right. She was sucking the joy out of everything. She was sucking the money out of everything, he snapped. She wanted hot water at night, Raylan. She left the AIC on. She didn't even help pay utilities. You said she had savings. Raylan rolled her eyes. She did. But remember, you had me transferred into our account for safety? Clayton laughed. Oh, right. That was smart. She never even asked. My hand gripped the mop so tightly, it trembled. They hadn't just abandoned me. They stole from me. They drained the $78,000 left from my house sale, the same funds I was saving in case I ever needed care in old age. They stole my home, my savings, and my dignity, and laughed while doing it. I backed away slowly, unnoticed, until I reached the cleaning closet. I sat on a plastic bucket, shaking. I wasn't just heartbroken anymore. I was furious. Later that night, I told Grant everything. The money, the lies, the betrayal. He didn't speak right away. Then he reached into his briefcase and pulled out another folder. This just came in. It's the opportunity we were waiting for. I opened it. My eyes scanned the header. Emergency shareholders buyout, pending signature. The current airport investors had a financial gap, one small enough for a wealthy bidder to step in and claim majority control. Grant had secured partial capital, but it still needed a name. A new name. Why me? I asked, my voice small. Because I'm dying, he said, voice steady. And I need someone to carry it on. My breath caught. What? He smiled, soft and tired. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. I've got 6 months, if I'm lucky. The floor beneath me didn't shift, it shattered. But Grant placed a warm hand over mine. This isn't about me anymore. It's about legacy. About people like us who gave everything and were discarded. He paused. I want to buy this airport, but I want you to run it. I wanted to refuse. I wanted to say, I'm just a grandmother. But those words had lost their meaning, because in that moment I realized something. They thought I was weak. They thought I was disposable. They thought they had ended me at that curb outside Departures. But they had only released me. That night, I signed my name on the papers. Eloise Maynard, executive partner, founder of the Clara Delaney Terminal Project. Clayton and Raylan had taken everything they could. But now I was taking everything back, and more. And they had no idea what was coming next. The day the deal closed, I stood in front of the airport's VIP observation deck, the same place where I once cried with nothing in my purse, nothing in my name, and watched as the last of the transfer documents were signed and uploaded. The new ownership agreement bore a name no one at the airport had ever heard before. Clara Delaney Terminal Holdings. But behind that corporate title was a woman reborn. I wasn't just cleaning floors anymore, I was calling the shots. With Grant's help and his remaining capital, we bought out 3 minor shareholders and secured silent backing from an airline group that owed Grant a favor from decades ago. By the time the ink dried, the new ownership stake gave us legal power to rename, restructure, and quietly, completely shift control. And they never saw it coming. Grant grew weaker each day, but his mind remained sharp. We sat together each evening in the conference room. He on oxygen, me with my reading glasses, plotting every step. Staff schedules, lease renewals, vendor contracts, new vision, quiet influence. Then one afternoon, he handed me a sealed envelope. I won't be here when we unveil it, he said, eyes full of peace. But don't make this about revenge. Make it about dignity. I hugged him for the first time that day. He didn't flinch. He only whispered, make sure your daughter sees. The next week, Grant passed in his sleep. No family, no funeral, just a legacy folded into mine. And that's when I made the call. I reached out to Raylan through a private number with an offer too tempting for her to ignore. Mom, she said, surprised. You're alive? Where have you? I've been around, I said, voice calm. I heard you're back from your vacation. How was France? She stammered. I continued, there's a luxury VIP pre-launch happening soon at the airport. New executive lounge, private tour, champagne. I thought you and Clayton might enjoy it. Her tone flipped instantly. That sounds nice. Why are you inviting us? Because it's time. I hung up. The day of the event, the airport sparkled. The new signage, sleek, brushed gold, was veiled behind curtains. A string quartet played near Gate 7. Staff wore black tie uniforms. The media showed up with cameras. It was everything Raylan ever loved. Attention, glitter, praise. She and Clayton arrived wearing their best. Raylan in designer heels, her hair freshly styled. Clayton in a pale gray suit, smirking like a politician. They walked the red carpet, oblivious to the fact that every single person there worked for me. I stood behind the scenes, dressed in an elegant navy blue pantsuit. For the first time in years, I wore heels. Real ones. As the press gathered, my assistant signaled. I stepped out to the podium. The cameras turned. Gasps. Whispers. And Raylan, who hadn't seen me since that rainy airport night, froze in place. I looked directly at her and smiled. Good afternoon. My name is Eloise Maynard, co-founder and executive director of Clara Delaney Terminal Holdings. Today, we unveil the transformation of this airport, not just in design, but in spirit. A tribute to vision, to respect, and to second chances. Raylan's mouth dropped open. Clayton's eyes narrowed. I pulled the gold cord, and the curtain fell. Behind me, in huge letters, Clara Delaney Terminal. And beneath it, a legacy of grace and grit. The applause was thunderous. Raylan began stepping forward.
Mom, wait.
I didn't know. I know you didn't, I said without flinching. You didn't care to ask. You took what you could, then left me behind. But now you've walked into my house. Clayton grabbed her arm. Is this a joke? What is this? I turned to security and calmly said, Escort Mr. Clayton and Ms. Raylan from the executive area. They don't have clearance. Raylan's face crumpled. You're humiliating us. No, I said. I'm simply returning the favor. As they were let out, reporters swarmed. Flashbulbs. Questions. But I didn't answer. Instead, I turned back to the staff, to the people who had seen me, not as a burden but as a person. And I said, today is not about revenge. It's about reclaiming our worth. But deep inside, I knew Raylan wouldn't let it end there. And I was right. Because 2 days later, she filed a lawsuit, claiming I had stolen her inheritance. She wanted my stake in the airport. She wanted control. But what she didn't realize was, I had already filed a lawsuit of my own. And my case was a ticking time bomb. The legal notice came in a sleek white envelope, delivered by courier to my office. The return address read, Raylan and Clayton Harwood, personal counsel. Inside was a single sheet of heavy stock paper, bold and arrogant in tone. This letter serves as a formal intent to file a claim of elder financial abuse, fraudulent concealment of funds, and emotional distress against Mrs. Eloise Maynard. I stared at it in silence. They were suing me, after stealing my money, after dumping me like luggage in the rain. Now they had the nerve to cry victim. For a moment, my hands trembled, not with fear, but with memory. I remembered Clayton talking me into handing over access to my bank account for my safety. I remembered Raylan assuring me, it's just easier if we manage it, Mom. You're retired now. I wasn't confused. They had manipulated me. But now they wanted to flip the story and paint me as unstable. Grant had warned me about this before he passed. People like them never apologize. They escalate, especially when they see you rise. I called my lawyer, Arliss Pike, a sharp, retired judge-turned-advisor Grant had known for decades. He read the letter and snorted. We've been expecting this, Arliss said. Luckily, you've been documenting everything just like I told you to. The bank transfers, the witness statements, even Melinda's affidavit about finding you abandoned at the terminal. I don't want a long court battle, I said. Arliss looked me square in the eye. Then let's end it. On your terms. The next day, we filed a countersuit. Misappropriation of retirement funds. Coercion of financial assets. Medical neglect of an elder. And the most damaging, power of attorney fraud. Because what Raylan and Clayton didn't know was, I had quietly revoked the power of attorney agreement 6 months before they took my house money. I did it after Clayton once joked about writing checks in my name before I croak. He never knew I took that joke seriously. Now, it was their turn to feel powerless. The case caught media attention. Not because of me, but because of the airport. Elder CEO battles own daughter over stolen retirement funds. One headline blared. My assistant filtered the requests. I denied interviews. I wasn't chasing fame. But Raylan? She took the bait. She went on local television with fake tears and glossy makeup, saying I was confused, paranoid, and being manipulated by strangers. She even waved around a photo of us from 15 years ago, at her wedding. She raised me to be compassionate, she said. I don't know what changed in her, but she needs help, not lawyers. And that's when I decided. It was time to show the world exactly who raised her. At the next airport press briefing, I stepped up to the podium again, but this time, I brought receipts, bank statements, video footage, witness letters, and most importantly, the revoked power of attorney, signed, notarized, and backed by an elder rights nonprofit. I may be old, I said into the cameras, but I am not helpless. I am not confused. And I remember everything. I paused and looked straight into the camera. To the families who treat their elders like trash, you are not caretakers. You are cowards. The video went viral within hours. Emails poured in. Messages from other abandoned parents. Women who gave their all, only to be tossed aside. Men who lived in silence. People saw me and believed me. That same week, Raylan and Clayton were summoned to court. Clayton tried to delay, claiming business obligations. The judge was unmoved, and when their bank records were subpoenaed, the truth unraveled fast. They had transferred over $70,000 from my savings into their joint investment account and used it to fund vacations, a Tesla, and several business brunches at luxury restaurants. Even worse, they had claimed me as a dependent on their taxes for 2 years, while simultaneously having no record of providing support. The courtroom was quiet as the judge read aloud the findings. Then he turned to Raylan and said, "You're not just a disgrace to your mother. You're a disgrace to this court." That moment should have satisfied me, but it didn't, because no legal verdict could undo the ache in my heart. No punishment could replace the years I spent believing I was loved. But something else happened that day. A woman approached me after the hearing, late 60s. Silver braid. Eyes like mine. "I saw your video," she whispered, "and I left my daughter's house last night. She was doing the same thing to me." She pressed a tiny thank you card into my hand. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of us. And if my story could help others reclaim their worth, then maybe what Raylan did would become the very thing that set hundreds of mothers free. But the story wasn't over yet. Because while the judge froze Raylan and Clayton's assets, there was one asset still untouched. My old house. The one they had secretly rented out behind my back. And now, it was time to pay them a visit. I stood across the street from my old house, the one I sold when Raylan said, "You won't need it anymore, Mom. Come stay with us." It looked different now. The picket fence I painted with my bare hands had been replaced by a taller, colder gate. The rose bushes I once trimmed every Saturday were gone, replaced by white pebbles and fake grass. The new tenants had turned my home into a sterile Airbnb, judging by the keypad lock and the party of strangers pulling suitcases through the front door. I watched from my parked car, hands gripping the steering wheel, heart pounding. This wasn't just a house. This was years of sacrifice. Late shifts at the hospital, brown bag lunches, quiet evenings reading to Raylan on the porch while the world outside rushed on. She took all of that and rented it out for profit. According to court filings, Raylan had quietly leased the home to generate passive income, even while pretending she didn't know what happened to the sale money. She and Clayton never lived there, not even for a month. But now, with their accounts frozen and public shame growing like wildfire, they'd run out of safe havens. And I was ready. Arliss had uncovered a loophole during the financial audit, a forged signature on the transferred deed of the house. The notary listed hadn't worked in Maryland in 4 years. "It means you never really sold it," he told me. "It meant it was still mine." We filed a reclamation motion. The court approved it faster than I expected, likely because of the mounting fraud evidence from the previous trial. And just like that, I had the right to walk into my house again. But I didn't want to just walk in. I wanted them to see it. So I waited. I waited until I knew they had nowhere else to go. 2 weeks later, with their accounts frozen and media hounding them daily, Raylan and Clayton showed up in front of the house with trash bags and cardboard boxes. They thought they could move back in. I pulled up behind them in a black SUV, courtesy of the airport's new transportation division. Raylan turned, confused. Her eyes met mine. She looked different now. Less polished. No glam squad. No gloss. Just puffy eyes and bitter pride. "What are you doing here?" she snapped. I stepped out slowly. My cane tapped gently on the pavement. I didn't need it that day, but I wanted them to hear every step. "This is my house," I said quietly. Clayton scoffed. "Legally, it's ours." "Not anymore," I replied, holding up a thick white envelope. "Deed reversal. Signed and sealed. The court confirmed it this morning." Raylan blinked.
No.
"No, you're lying." "You should know by now," I said. "I don't lie. I just wait." She lunged forward. "You can't do this. You're ruining our lives." I stared at her for a long moment. "No," I said. "You did that." Clayton stepped forward. "Where are we supposed to go?" I shrugged. "Try the airport. I hear there's a bench near gate 26. I spent 3 nights there once." Raylan's lips trembled. "We're your family." "No," I cut in. "Family doesn't throw you away. Family doesn't steal your money and mock you behind your back. Family shows up even when it's inconvenient." I paused, then added gently, "You were my daughter, and I loved you with everything I had. But I won't let that love destroy what I've built now." With a nod to my driver, I turned around and stepped toward the front door. They stood frozen, their lives reduced to duffel bags and regret. As I inserted the key into the lock, I felt a strange calm settle in my chest. I wasn't angry anymore, just free. Inside, the walls still had the faint scent of lavender from my old linen spray. The wooden floors creaked like they remembered me. I walked room to room in silence. This time, not as a guest, not as a burden, but as the rightful owner. Later that evening, I stood by the window, sipping tea as the last of the sun fell on the porch steps. Raylan and Clayton had left. Not a single word. And I didn't need one, because I was no longer waiting for apologies from people who were never sorry. But I wasn't done, because there were hundreds of others like me, mothers, grandmothers, elders cast aside for being too old for luxury. And I had a new vision. If I could take back my house, if I could help name an airport, then maybe I could build something even bigger. A foundation. A sanctuary. A place where forgotten elders could start again. And the first seed of it was about to be planted where it all began, at the heart of the Baltimore airport. But I didn't know that Raylan had one more plan left, a final twist. And this time, she wasn't aiming for my money. She was aiming for my legacy. It began with a phone call. I was in the middle of a board meeting with the airport's new outreach committee, planning a program that would provide free travel assistance and luxury lounge access for seniors traveling alone, when my assistant, Maggie, slipped into the room holding a phone. "Ma'am," she whispered. "It's urgent. It's about your foundation application." I stepped into the hallway and took the call. "Mrs. Maynard," said the voice on the line, crisp and firm. "This is Jacqueline Withers with the Federal Registry of Charitable Trusts. We've received a complaint regarding your new nonprofit. The claim states your funds were sourced from fraudulent activity and may involve elder manipulation." I froze. "What?" "The claimant has submitted documents alleging that your initial capital, used to launch your airport stake and this foundation, was acquired through coercive influence over a terminally ill investor, one Mr. Grant Delaney." My chest tightened. Raylan. This was her final move. Not a lawsuit. Not a public tantrum. This time, she was trying to destroy what I stood for, the very mission built from my pain. I remained calm. "I have legal documentation of all transactions. Mr. Delaney's investment was voluntary, strategic, and protected by witness signatures. Would you like me to submit those now?" There was a pause. "Then, please do. But you should know, the claimant is also contacting local media." By the time I got home that night, my name was on 5 different blogs. Is Baltimore's new elder advocate a fraud? Terminal investor manipulated by Grandma CEO? Justice or guilt money? The Eloise Maynard Foundation under fire. The next morning, reporters lined up outside the airport terminal. I didn't cry. I didn't run. Instead, I walked out with my head held high, invited the press to the auditorium, and gave them the truth. I showed Grant's final video recording, something he had left behind months before he passed. It played on the screen behind me. My name is Grant Delaney. I'm dying of cancer, and I've chosen to invest my last savings, not in stocks or gold, but in a woman named Eloise Maynard. Because she reminded me of everything that's been stripped from this world: grace, humility, and backbone. This woman didn't manipulate me. She inspired me. She gave me a reason to die in peace, knowing my late wife's legacy lives on through someone with fire in her soul. The room fell silent. Reporters didn't have follow-up questions. Only tears. The smear campaign Raylan launched backfired. Within a week, donations to the foundation tripled. Airlines reached out, offering sponsorship for the senior program. The mayor's office contacted us to discuss expanding the concept to train stations and bus terminals. And Raylan? She vanished from public life. No apology. No admission. But I didn't need either. Because her silence was the loudest confession of all. Months passed. The foundation opened its first elder transit center at the airport. We offered rest lounges, warm meals, even birthday celebrations for senior travelers. One afternoon, while watching an 84-year-old woman hug a flight attendant who helped her find her gate, Maggie turned to me. "You did this," she whispered. "You gave them back their worth." I nodded, blinking back tears. But the story had one more chapter. I was sitting in my old kitchen, sunlight pouring in, birds singing outside, when a letter came in the mail. No return address. Just my name, handwritten. Inside was a photograph. It was Raylan. She was standing outside a small building, a women's shelter, judging by the sign behind her. Her eyes were tired, her face softer. On the back, she'd written only 7 words. "I see now. I'm so sorry." I stared at it for a long time. Then I slipped the photo into a drawer and closed it gently. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't seeking justice. Because I had built something stronger than revenge. I had built peace. And as the airport lights glowed in the distance outside my window, I smiled quietly. I wasn't too old for luxury. I was too valuable for their limits. And now, the world would remember that. So should you. Don't let anyone decide when your story ends. Because sometimes the final chapter is the one you write. If this story moved you, don't scroll away. Like this video to support more real stories that need to be heard. Comment below. Have you ever felt abandoned by someone you loved? Share your experience. We read every word. Subscribe to Buried Truth for more powerful tales of betrayal, resilience, and redemption. Share this story with someone who needs to remember. It's never too late to rise.